It's day 5 in our Alaskan cruise, and our port of call today is Skagway. Now, Skagway is located between 2 mountains in a valley. It's very picturesque. And of course, like many towns in Alaska, it was founded on the gold rush, I believe in 1987. And the name Skagway means home of the north wind. And boy, is that appropriate. Here's a picture of me going back to the boat, and as you can see, it was very, very windy. Definitely was a bad hair day. Surprisingly, the temperature is only 10 degrees cooler than Seattle year-round. Only an average of 33 inches of rain for the entire year. Of course, it lightly drizzled while we were there all day. Now, the town only has 800 residents year-round, and that number triples about in the summer because of all the tourists that come. And it must be really different living there year-round. There is a clinic staffed by nurse practitioners, but the nearest hospital is 100 miles away, and a dentist makes calls once a month. So if you got a toothache, you better hope it's near the weekend that the dentist comes. The most famous, or should I say infamous, character in the history for Skagway was Soapy Smith. His real name was Jefferson Randolph Smith II, and he got his nickname Soapy because of a soap con he used to do. He was definitely a con artist and crime boss in both Skagway and Denver, and he ended up dying in a shootout in Skagway. Now, Skagway is known for the White Pass and Yukon Railroad, and it links Skagway to Whitehorse, which is in Yukon Territory of Canada. And this railroad was completed in 1900 and became the primary method of travel to the interior of the Yukon during the Klondike Gold Rush. So we decided to take the White Pass Railway and Yukon Expedition Tour for $249 a person. We boarded a bus at the dock and traveled the South Klondike Highway to the top of the White Pass, which is 3,292 feet above sea level. The scenery was often breathtaking. We had to show our passports to enter Canada and the Yukon Territory. After a while, we stopped for lunch at the Caribou Crossing Trading Post, and the chicken barbecue wasn't too bad, and it included all-you-could-eat homemade donuts. The Wildlife Museum there had some great taxidermy exhibits. Definitely the closest we got to any wildlife on the entire Alaskan trip. Everyone wanted to hold the sled dog puppies at the attached dog mushers village, and they were adorable. After lunch, we stopped at Emerald Lake, which was really quite beautiful, and these pictures don't capture the depth of the color of the lake. We then stopped at the actual town of Carcross. It is a very, very small town. I really can't imagine living there year-round, but people do. And I imagine it's tourists that keep it alive. Wolf Island is south of Carcross on the southern Klondike Highway. It really is very picturesque there. And on the return trip, we boarded the actual railroad itself in Fraser for the trip back to Skagway. We felt we saw more of the scenery on the bus than we did the railroad. It was very noisy in the railroad cars, and very, very cold because people kept going in and out the door to go on the platform, and people opened the windows, and it was kind of miserable trip. Some of the scenery was beautiful, but really we saw much more on the bus. So we arrived back in Skagway, and my husband decided to board the boat, and my son and I decided to walk downtown. My son wanted to buy a gold pan for gold panning later in our trip, so we were searching the various stores downtown. And unlike the other two ports we visited, there were not all these jewelry stores lining the streets. It was just a very, very quaint downtown. It has only one grocery store, one bank, one hardware store, one gas station, and some gift shops. And the only chain store in town is Radio Shack, that also houses a video rental store and tanning salon. It was at the hardware store that my son found the gold pans that he was looking for, so he was pretty happy. Here's the Red Onion Saloon, which was originally a brothel. We did not participate in what is called the Quickie Tour. $5 for 15 minutes, just like in 1898. I had to take a picture of the Arctic Brotherhood Hall, one of the most photographed buildings in Alaska. The front is covered with 8,800 driftwood pieces collected by lodge members in 1900. It closed in 1920 and is now a visitor's center. On a side street, we saw a shop called Klondike Doughboys. The shop had clothing, jams and jellies, and reindeer sausage, of course. But best of all, it featured fry bread, and the cinnamon smell was absolutely intoxicating. My son ordered one fry bread, which was of course called a doughboy, and it was huge. I think it was a good value in Alaska because I think it was only $6. The shop is owned by year-round residents, a husband who is a carpenter and a wife who teaches school. Now, here in Michigan, we would call that fry bread a elephant ear. I think in Canada they say beaver tail, and I guess here in Alaska, or at least in Skagway at the shop, they call it doughboy. Walking the streets, my son had his doughboy in his hand and was munching on it, and he became a walking billboard for that store. People kept coming up to us asking where he got it, and we were directing people to the store. I really wish I would have gotten one too, because it really, really did taste good. It started to be closing time for a lot of the stores, so we meandered back to the docks and kind of fought the high wind and got back on our boat. Tomorrow, day 6, we'll be cruising Glacier Bay. This is Prepper Potpourri. Thank you so much for joining me on my Alaskan cruise.